Everybody, Bill Sparks from Bill Ministries. Glad to have the opportunity again today to speak to one of our favorite cancer patients, Miss Sarah Kay. And so just want to get it caught up. She's got some great things going on in her life right now. And so, Sarah, why don't you just take a minute and give your backstory and tell folks what the history of your own cancer journey looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. My cancer journey started on July 20th, but 5 years ago in 2017, just celebrated that anniversary. When I got a call from my doctor that when I went in to do routine blood work, he saw some blasts in my bone marrow and in my blood work. And so he thought that I had cancer. And so he said I needed to get down to Indy immediately and went to the ER. They confirmed it again with more blood work. And then I was taken over to the IU Simon Cancer Center. And that night I was actually started on chemo for 24/7 for 21 days. Ended up staying there initially 28 days. And then I went back for maintenance chemo in August, September, October, and November of that year. I spent a week. In November, we found what we call bone marrow transplant donor because my brother wasn't like a full match. So we found an unrelated donor who lived across the world, and he donated his bone marrow to me. And so that gave me about 6 months of being able to start recovering. But then in June of 2018, my doctor told me that my transplant had failed and my cells had taken back over, which was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. But this time they said that they would try to use my brother's cells, even though he was a half match, but maybe our cells would be more familiar. And so in July of 2018, I had my second bone marrow transplant using my brother's cells. And then I spent the next year and a half, 2 years or so recovering and being able to get back to life. It took me a while to get back to school, took me a while to get back to work. But I persevered through all of that, and I've had a village to help me. In November of 2020, our house caught on fire. We had an electrical fire here at the house. No one was harmed. We did lose our dog Bailey in the fire, but it was just another setback after having all this treatment, all this chemo, finally feeling like we were out of the woods. And then bam, that happened. We lost everything. And it's taken over a year or so to recover from that. But we're back in our house. As you can see, we had our house rebuilt for us. And so I got done with the fire stuff. I was still kind of recovering. And then in December of 2021, I graduated from law school, which was just a huge accomplishment. It was something that I had done. I had started before cancer, got in the middle of it, got the cancer diagnosis, had to take time off, and then went back to. So I started back at the prosecutor's office here in my county in January of 2022. And so I'm actually taking the bar exam next week. So any prayers would definitely be appreciated as I'm going through and studying and trying to get ready for it. But that's my story kind of in a nutshell.
So tell me real quick, and just help other people understand how life was that first few nights getting chemo you literally went from living to like totally, absolutely bedridden pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what was going through your mind during that time?
Oh, there was so much. Pretty much what happened, I got the phone call while I was at work. And so my husband came and picked me up. And then we got my son, and then we headed down to the ER, and we had family that met us there to help with Preston. I still was in disbelief until I was actually laying in the bed at the Simon Cancer Center. And the doctor said, "You're going to be here for 3 to 4 weeks." And I remember going, weeks? Like this morning, I had just woken up and taken my son to daycare and got myself ready for work. I was at work. And now I'm laying in a bed, hooked up to monitors and chemotherapy. It was incredibly scary. It was very scary to go through.
So tell me a little bit about how your son dealt with all of that and some of the highlights and lowlights of how that went as a mom.
Well, my mom actually came up to help us. She was here for 18 months while I recovered. I mean, when she got the call that I had cancer, she drove up from Georgia at 3 a.m., you know, to come be
Wow.
with me. She got there right as the doctor was there telling us the diagnosis. Preston was 2.5 at the time and could not understand why I couldn't come home.
Mhm.
And my mom and David had to really, you know, reassure him and tell him that it's going to be okay. And it was really scary for him to go to a hospital to see me, and I'm hooked up to everything and he can't get me a hug like he wants to. So we've had to work with Preston a lot since then, to say, hey, mommy's okay. You know, she got through it. She's here for you. But we still have our moments where it's hard.
Yep, yep. And I still remember the video when you went to class during school and he'd come in the classroom and him come running over like, Mom, oh boy.
Yeah,
In
that
fact, I
happened
might have to look
twice.
that up. I might have to look that up.
Hi, baby. I missed you.
I got home from the hospital today.
Oh,
Yeah, hi,
how
baby.
about that surprise?
I know. I love you. I'm so glad to see you. Look at me, Daddy.
Well, that's
You say Daddy? Hi. Come here. I'm home. Hi, I'm home. Yeah. It's you. I love it. Oh, you're tired?
But so how did David deal with all this? How was he in the process of you going through all this?
For a while there, it was just going through the motions and just we were on survival mode, honestly, is what it is. And so he was working at the time and he needed to work so that I had insurance so that I could get well. So he was getting up in the morning and going to work, coming home, getting Preston, going to the hospital, coming back. I mean, there was just a whole lot of moving parts with that. And it took us a long time to kind of, we're still processing everything. But it was incredibly stressful for him because he had to continue working. But my mom was here and she helped me take care of Preston and she ran me to doctor's appointments. And there were times when I had to get rushed down to the hospital and she would go with me and then David would follow like right behind her. So it was an interesting time in our lives that I'm glad is over.
What would you tell someone who is today hearing, gosh, you have cancer? What would you tell them now with where you're at? And obviously you don't know what kind of cancer necessarily, but what are some of the things you felt like you could say to them now that you've been through this journey?
Take everything one day at a time because things change, quite literally. Don't try to plan too far in ahead. The next thing I would tell them is to keep a positive attitude, because if you keep a negative attitude, you're just hurting yourself. If you try to keep yourself positive and say, you know, every day, I'm getting better, I'm going to heal, that will make things go a lot easier for you than if you sit there and mull and lay in the bed and just are like, no, I don't want to say woe is me. But just thinking about how much things hurt or how much this sucks, you know, or anything like that. I have another thing. The other thing I would say is to lean on your village. And what I mean by that is let people help you. I had a really hard time with that in the beginning because everybody's like, how do I help? And I'm laying in a hospital bed, just got there with chemo. And it's like, I don't know how I can help. But if you have a family member or trusted friend that can feel those calls and feel like the Facebook calls, like I had so many people on Facebook that were wanting to know. And so I put my dad in charge of answering the Facebook
I
posts.
remember that. Yeah.
And then I had another friend of mine who was like, let people help you and accept the gifts and accept the food. Your job is to heal. And that took me a couple of weeks to get through to me. But then as I got sicker, it made more sense. And I was extremely grateful to have people that were there to help me.
But just tell me, how do you feel like you are as a person now that you've been through cancer? Better, worse? Tell me, what do you think about now that you're on the other side? What do you feel like it's done for you?
That's a hard question. For me, I think it has shown me more resilience and more confidence that I can, I mean, especially with going to law school, it was like, I have people tell me all the time, they're like, well, you beat cancer, so you can beat the bar. That'll be easy peasy, you know, kind of thing. It also made me grow up a little bit too. and realize that, life is fragile and you got to take care of your family and your health. So I'd say it was a positive coming out of it. Now that I'm 5 years out from the diagnosis, but it does take time, and it does take a lot of time to process.
So, are there any other highlights along the way or anything that you want to share before we shut down here?
I'm trying to think. I do work for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society now. I'm one of their advocates. That what I do is I work with a small team here in Indiana, and we go to our senators and our House of Representative members, and we advocate for blood cancer patients. And so what that means is that if there's a bill or something coming up that we need to bring to attention of our legislators, then that's what we do. We schedule calls with them, and I tell them my story. And my friend, her name is Sarah too. She tells her story, and then we say, this is what we're asking you to do. And we want you to support this bill, or we need you to support blood cancer patients. But really, it's not just blood cancer patients, it's everybody. In fact, we've lobbied for the act that was just passed a couple of months ago about the surprise billing, which basically what happened, it happened to me, is that you call for an ambulance and you can't pick what ambulance comes to you. You're just happy. Then you get a bill, and the bill, you're like, oh, out of network. So we helped get that changed so that you wouldn't have any surprise medical bills, especially with things like ambulances and things that you just can't control, which was really gratifying, and just our hard work paid off on that. And I'm really proud of the work that we did.
Things that, with us walking alongside you and encouraging you, what are the things that found its way to your heart and helped you get through that we were able to do?
Oh, just like having people call me and having people text me, and like whenever I needed something, I was just like, hey, can you help me out with this? And you were like, absolutely. And sending me cards and just being a part of my village and being a support for me. So it's happy for me to do things like this, because I feel like I'm giving back for all the things that you guys did for me, and sent me care packages. I mean, the whole 9 yards. It was awesome.
Well, and by doing this, I also know that you're helping people who are listening to your story to see that there is the other side of cancer, and what they're going through right now really does have a place at which that it becomes a different journey.
Yeah.
And there's times at which that you're obviously thankful for what you learned through the difficult times, because it's the only time we learn. So, yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, hey, Sarah, thanks for your time. I'm going to let you get back to everything you got going on, and just appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today, all right?
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. God bless you. Take care now.
You too.